The morning had been perfectly ordinary at least. That's what Marissa Ewing would keep telling herself in the weeks that followed. The sun had just crested the eastern ridge, casting soft amber light over the quiet streets of Lakemont, Idaho. Birds chirped from pine branches. Sprinklers ticked rhythmically across manicured lawns. 17-year-old Adrienne Ewing had stood in the foyer, clipping a leash onto Buddy, her golden retriever, while her mother buttered toast in the kitchen. It was a Saturday. It's the first week of July 8th. To be exact, Adrienne had slipped on her lightweight hoodie and her worn hiking shoes, the same pair she always wore for her early morning walks. She leaned into the kitchen to call out a quick, "Be back in 30, Mom." And Marissa, distracted by a text from her nursing supervisor, simply waved. That was the last time she saw her daughter. The moment Marissa realized something was wrong wasn't when Adrienne missed her 30-minute window. It wasn't even when 45 minutes ticked by. It was when Buddy returned alone, leash trailing behind him. Muddy and trembling on the front porch, Marissa had barely had time to scream before her knees gave out. Buddy pawed at the door frantically, whimpering with a low, guttural panic that didn't sound like him at all. His golden coat was matted with something darker dirt, maybe, or blood, and his eyes were wide, wild. Adrienne was nowhere in sight. That was the beginning of the longest year of Marissa Ewing's life. The search began within the hour. By noon, Lakemont was swarming with sheriff's deputies, police dogs, volunteers in reflective vests, and search helicopters. Buddy was rushed to the emergency vet for examination. His paws were cut. There were bramble scratches along his legs and stomach, but he was alive, and Adrienne was not with him. The area behind the neighborhood, the entrance to the Centennial Trail, was cordoned off with yellow tape. That was where Adrienne was believed to have gone. But even with drones, canines, and hundreds of volunteers scouring the dense underbrush and old logging roads, no trace of her was found. No torn clothing. No blood, no phone. No body, and no sign of a struggle. The trail, like so many others in the thickly forested corners of Idaho, eventually looped into the Kirtland National Forest, a sprawling, rugged expanse that could hide anything or anyone. For years, by August, the posters with Adrienne's face had begun to fade in the sunlight. Marissa kept one on the refrigerator, her fingers tracing it nightly before bed. Missing, Adrienne Ewing, age 17, height 5'6", eyes, green hair, auburn, last seen wearing gray hoodie, jeans, hiking boots, last seen Saturday. 7:30 a.m., the official search had been scaled back by September. By winter, law enforcement was calling it cold. And by spring, some had begun to murmur what Marissa refused to accept. That Adrienne had run away, Marissa never believed it. Adrienne wouldn't leave Buddy behind, wouldn't have abandoned her college plans, her medical textbooks, the little journal where she tracked her GPA like her life depended on it. Adrienne was grounded. She had a future. But as the months crawled on, hope decayed. The media forgot. The neighborhood quieted. And Marissa stopped opening the front door when people knocked with casseroles and sad smiles. Then came July, again almost a full year later, and something finally broke the silence. It was a hunter, Dale Morrison, 54 years old, experienced, cautious, and deeply familiar with the Kirtland forest. He was tracking elk migration patterns using a thermal drone, a new toy he'd bought himself for the season. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable, a heat signature, roughly the size of a medium dog, tied to a tree. Dale had assumed it was a coyote or a stray, but curiosity pushed him to investigate. He hiked into the coordinates and found a golden retriever alive, but emaciated, tied with thick rope to the base of an old pine tree. The dog had been fed, cared for, even, but it was the collar that told him to call the authorities. It had no tags. Just a blue nylon strap with no identifying information. The police ran his microchip. It was Buddy. Marissa stood in the doorway of the vet clinic, heart slamming against her ribs as the receptionist led her to the back room. Dr. Sarah Chen met her at the door. He's sedated just to calm him, but he's going to be okay. There he was. On the metal table, thinner, his coat dulled, still unmistakably him. Tears spilled down Maurice's face as she reached for his fur. He was warm. He was breathing. "How?" she asked. Dr. Chen hesitated, then said, "That's the strange part. He's been fed regularly. His stomach had traces of commercial dry food. Someone's been taking care of him at least until very recently." Maurice's hands began to tremble. Someone had been keeping him alive. Detective Marcus Holbrook was already there when she left the exam room. He held his tablet in both hands, flipping through thermal images. "We're organizing a full-ground search," he said, starting at the exact coordinates Buddy was found. "But there's more." He brought up a photo. "This is the collar he was found with." Marissa stared. "That's not his." "You sure?" "I'm sure. He had a red leather collar. Tags with our address, phone number, his name." Holbrook nodded. "Someone changed it. On purpose." The implications hung in the air like thick smoke. "Why feed him at all?" Marissa asked. "Why keep him alive?" "We're going to find out." By that evening, Marissa's house had transformed into a base of operations. Search maps spread. Across the kitchen table, teachers from Lakeland High showed up to help. So did neighbors and Adrienne's old teammates from the cross-country team. One of them stood out, Mr. Tobias Chandler. Adrienne's AP biology teacher, he approached Marissa with a grave, sympathetic smile. "I want you to know, Adrienne was a remarkable student. Her absence has been felt every single day." "Thank you," Marissa said quietly. "I'll be leading Search Team C," he added. "We'll take the eastern quadrant." Dense area. Not many trails. "I've studied the terrain." "You've studied it?" she asked. He nodded. "Just wanted to be prepared. Brought emergency supplies, GPS, flares. I've done a lot of reading on rescue protocols." Marissa blinked. That was unusual, but she said nothing. The following morning, search teams began fanning out. Marissa was assigned to Team A, heading north along the more navigable trails. Tobias Chandler headed east with his team of volunteers, hiking gear that looked brand new and a quiet, unreadable expression. But something about his confidence nagged at her. And later, when she mentioned Adrienne's tutoring sessions, he corrected her, said they met Tuesdays and Thursdays. When Marissa knew it had been Mondays and Wednesdays, something deeper began to stir. She excused herself from the crowd, went upstairs, and opened Adrienne's bedroom for the first time in weeks. The planner was there. In the desk drawer, with Adrienne's tidy handwriting filling the margins in multiple colors, Sept 12, tutoring. Mr. C, room 214 to 3:30 p.m. October 3rd. Mr. C says I'm his best student. November 18th, he gave me a pink bracelet, said it's our secret. Marissa's breath caught. December 10th, secret study spot. Not to tell anyone, not even Jess. Jess was Adrienne's best friend. The entries continued, Jess more disturbing than the last. Mentions of personalized study sessions, praise, gifts, emotional manipulation, and finally, a name. Mr. C says people wouldn't understand our connection. Marissa clutched the journal to her chest, nausea twisting through her. Her heart was pounding with something beyond fear now. Instinct. When the search teams rolled out again that afternoon, Marissa didn't join Team A. She watched Tobias Chandler get into his car. Instead of heading toward the forest, he drove in. The opposite direction, south, toward the outskirts of town. Marissa followed, staying 2 cars behind, watching as he pulled into a gas station. Then a fruit stand, and finally 4 miles down a winding road, a gravel driveway, leading to an old craftsman house nestled behind. RHODODENDRONS. She jotted down the address from the mailbox, 4847. Rimrock Road, and then she looked it up. House had belonged to his grandmother, Eleanor Chandler. She had died in 2019. Tobias inherited it. It had been listed as a rental until June 15th. Adrienne vanished on July 8th. Marissa parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, her heart thudding in her chest. The house looked empty, but it was maintained. Fresh paint, cut grass. A newspaper. Pile on the porch suggesting someone came here regularly, but didn't live here. Behind the house, through the trees. She spotted the basement, and the moment she peeked through the narrow basement window, her entire world shifted. There was a desk, a whiteboard, textbooks stacked neatly, a purple backpack with a smiley face patch on the front pocket. Adrienne Stuggers, this was no rental, no storage space, no forgotten property. This was a classroom, a prison, and her daughter was inside it. Marissa pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Heart crashing in her chest, she heard footsteps. Voice Tobias. He was speaking softly. Your mother still hasn't figured it out. We have to be more careful now that they found the dog. And then a girl's voice, faint, resigned. Adrienne, alive. The waiting room on the third floor of Senai Health Hospital had the cold, forced calm of a place that had seen too much quiet grief. Adrienne Ewing sat with her back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap, watching the hour hand crawl. Adrienne had been asleep for nearly 9 hours, her longest, deepest rest since being rescued from the Chandler basement. Nurses had checked her vitals every 2 hours. A trauma specialist had peeked in once, but Marissa hadn't moved. She couldn't. What if Adrienne woke up and she wasn't there? A nurse named Chelsea finally stepped in. Mrs. Ewing? Marissa stood. She's up. Marissa exhaled, her breath hitching like a skipped heartbeat. Adrienne was sitting up, blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. She looked small in the hospital bed, legs folded, fingers wrapped around a cup of apple juice. Her hair had been brushed out, but the ends were uneven. Her arms looked too thin beneath the fabric of the gown. Marissa hesitated in the doorway. Adrienne looked up. Hi. Hi, Marissa said, voice trembling. Can I sit? Nodded. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrienne said, You smell the same. Like eucalyptus and that red shampoo? Marissa choked on a laugh that almost turned into a sob. I never changed it. Thought maybe you did, Adrienne said softly. After I was gone, I never stopped hoping you'd come back, Adrienne stared at the cup in her hands. He said you wouldn't want me anymore, that I'd been gone too long, that I was different now, Marissa swallowed. You're not different. You're hurt, but not broken. Adrienne said nothing, but her eyes glistened. Detective Holbrook reviewed the contents of the evidence boxes with a growing sense of unease. There were far too many notebooks, far too many names, and none of those names had ever been reported. Missing, that meant two possibilities. Either Chandler had only fully abducted Adrienne, or there were others. Ones who hadn't made it home. Ones whose disappearances hadn't been connected. He'd already started matching up the handwriting, logging similarities across the pages. Every notebook bore Chandler's telltale remarks. In the margins, excellent progress. You're ready for the next level. Don't tell anyone, some students won't understand our methods. One of the older notebooks, dated 2013, had a name he recognized, Kayla Pendry. He flipped through the old case file, a Lakemont High sophomore who dropped out mid-semester. No formal missing person report. It's just a note that she'd gone to live with her father in Arizona, except that her father had died in 2009. Holbrook sat back in his chair. There were others, back at the hospital. Adrienne slowly began to talk. It started with little details, breakfasts, reading sessions, the assignments. Chandler gave her the reward system. He'd used Dextra food, praise, soft music in the evenings, if she earned it. Then she began describing the schedule. 6A.M. Wake up, she murmured. Breakfast by 6:30. Test prep from 7 to 9. Biology from 9 to 11. History, lunch, then English until 3. Then independent study. Marissa didn't interrupt. Adrienne's voice dropped. There was a punishment room. He called it the reset space. If I fell behind, if I argued. Marissa felt her hands curl into fists. He never hit me, Adrienne added quickly. Not once, but silence was worse. Silence. He'd stop talking to me. For hours, sometimes a full day. Not even eye contact. Marissa was crying again. I would beg for assignments, Adrienne said, just to make him look at me. Holbrook returned to 4847 Rimrock Road with a warrant to search the surrounding land. He brought a cadaver dog this time. The yard looked peaceful, wildflowers blooming around the edge of the fence, the grass neatly trimmed. But the dog led them to a spot beneath an old cedar tree, behind the detached garage. They found disturbed soil first, then plastic sheeting, then bones, 2 sets. One older, likely an animal, but the other, human, female. Teenage Holbrook stepped away, heart heavy. They hadn't wanted to find this, but now they had no choice but to dig deeper into Chandler's history. That evening, Holbrook visited Marissa at the hospital to update her. He waited until Adrienne was asleep again. "I need to tell you something," said gently Marissa. Looked up. Her eyes were hollow. "What?" "We found human remains behind the Chandler property. Female, around Adrienne's age." Marissa's breath caught. "Oh my God! We don't know who yet. We're testing DNA, but I think she may have been one of his earlier victims. A girl who slipped through the cracks." Marissa shook her head slowly. "How many?" "We're trying to find out?" Adrienne woke screaming the next night. Marissa jolted upright as the monitors beeped. Adrienne's voice was hoarse, clawing through the dark. "No. No, please. I'll study hard, Rye. Promise don't put me in the dark. Don't take Buddy again. Please, please." Marissa grabbed her, cradled her, whispered her name over and over until Adrienne finally clung to her and sobbed. A nurse came in, but didn't speak. She simply adjusted the lights and left them in silence. 3 days later, Adrienne was discharged from the hospital, but only under the condition that she would continue daily therapy with Dr. Morrison. Marissa brought her home to their quiet 2-story house on West Fairview. Adrienne stepped inside slowly, as if expecting everything to be different. But it wasn't. Her room was the same. Purple comforter, desk with books, photos on the wall. She stood in the doorway, staring at the stuffed fox on her pillow. "I thought you'd packed everything away," she whispered. "I couldn't," Marissa said. Adrienne stepped inside, ran a finger across her dresser. "I missed this room so much I started drawing it from memory. I got pretty close." Marissa blinked back tears. "Do you want me to stay with you?" Adrienne hesitated, then nodded. Marissa climbed into bed beside her, just like when she was little. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Eventually, Adrienne murmured, "He said, if I ever escaped, the world wouldn't want me anymore." "He was wrong," Marissa said fiercely. So wrong." Meanwhile, detectives uncovered more journals in Chandler's garage, some of them dating back 15 years. 5 names were connected to high school girls who had suddenly withdrawn from Lakemont. 2 of them had never been seen again. Another, Maya Dolson, had reportedly relocated to Michigan, but no public records could verify it. Holbrook had a sinking feeling that Adrienne was just the first one they'd managed to save. The rest, buried in stories? And maybe in dirt. One morning, Marissa entered Adrienne's room and found her sitting, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by textbooks. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Adrienne didn't look up, studying. "For what?" Adrienne paused, then said, "He used to say if I stopped learning, my brain would decay." Marissa sat beside her. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, not to him." "Me," Adrienne's voice was barely above a whisper. Marissa looked at her daughter's fragile form, at the bruises still fading along her arms. Her eyes were haunted. But underneath something remained, the drive. To survive? Marissa reached out and took her hand. "Then we'll do it your way, at your pace." Adrienne nodded. For the first time since coming home, she smiled just a little. But that same night, while Marissa slept, Adrienne stood in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She ran, a finger across her cheek, then across her collarbone. Then she whispered, "Do you think I'm special now?" She said it to no one, to a ghost. The waiting room on the 3rd floor of Senai Health Hospital had the cold, forced calm of a place that had seen too much quiet grief. Marissa Ewing sat with her back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap, watching the hour hand crawl. Adrienne had been asleep for nearly 9 hours, her longest, deepest rest since being rescued from the Chandler basement. Nurses had checked her vitals every 2 hours. A trauma specialist had peeked in once. But Marissa hadn't moved. She couldn't. What if Adrienne woke up and she wasn't there? A nurse named Chelsea finally stepped in. Mrs. Ewing. Marissa stood. She's up. Marissa exhaled, her breath hitching like a skipped heartbeat. Adrienne was sitting up, blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. She looked small in the hospital bed, legs folded, fingers wrapped around a cup of apple juice. Her hair had been brushed out, but the ends were uneven, and her arms looked too thin beneath the fabric of the gown. Marissa hesitated in the doorway. Adrienne looked up. Hi, Marissa said, voice trembling. Can I sit? Adrienne nodded. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrienne said, You smell the same. Like eucalyptus and that red shampoo? Marissa choked on a laugh that almost turned into a sob. I never changed it. I thought maybe you did, Adrienne said softly. After I was gone, I never stopped hoping you'd come back. Adrienne stared at the cup in her hands. Said you wouldn't want me anymore. That I'd been gone too long. That I was different now. Marissa swallowed. You're not different. You're hurt. But not broken. Adrienne said nothing. But her eyes glistened. Detective Holbrook reviewed the contents of the evidence boxes with a growing sense of unease. There were far too many notebooks, far too many names, and none of those names had ever been reported. Missing, that meant two possibilities. Either Chandler had only fully abducted Adrienne, or there were others, ones who hadn't made it home, ones whose disappearances hadn't been connected. He'd already started matching up the handwriting, logging similarities across the pages. Every notebook bore Chandler's telltale remarks. In the margins, excellent progress. You ready for the next level? Don't tell anyone, some students won't understand our methods. One of the older notebooks, dated 2013, had a name he recognized, Kayla Pendry. He flipped through the old case file, a Lakemont High sophomore who dropped out mid-semester. No formal missing person report, just a note that she'd gone to live with her father in Arizona, except that her father had died in 2009. Holbrook sat back in his chair. There were others. Back at the hospital, Adrienne slowly began to talk. It started with little details, breakfasts, reading sessions, the assignments Chandler gave her. The reward system he'd used: extra food, praise, soft music in the evenings if she earned it. Then she began describing the schedule. 6A.M. Wake up, she murmured. Breakfast by 6:30. Test prep from 7 to 9. Biology from 9 to 11. History. Lunch. Then English until 3. Then independent study. Marissa didn't interrupt. Adrienne's voice dropped. There was a punishment room. Called it the reset space. If I fell behind, if I argued. Marissa felt her hands curl into fists. He never hit me, Adrienne added quickly. Not once, but silence was worse. Silence. He'd stop talking to me. For hours, sometimes a full day, not even eye contact. Marissa was crying again. I would beg for assignments, Adrienne said, just to make him look at me. Holbrook returned to 4847 Rimrock Road with a warrant to search the surrounding land. He brought a cadaver dog this time. The yard looked peaceful, wildflowers blooming around the edge of the fence, the grass neatly trimmed. But the dog led them to a spot beneath an old cedar tree behind the detached garage. They found disturbed soil first, then plastic sheeting, then bones, 2 sets. One older, likely an animal, but the other, human, female, teenage. Holbrook stepped away, heart heavy. They hadn't wanted to find this, but now they had no choice but to dig deeper into Chandler's history. That evening, Holbrook visited Marissa at the hospital to update her. He waited until Adrienne was asleep again. I need to tell you something, said gently. Marissa looked up. Her eyes were hollow. What? We found human remains behind the Chandler property. Female. Around Adrienne's age. Marissa's breath caught. Oh my God. We don't know who yet. We're testing DNA. but I think she may have been one of his earlier victims. A girl who slipped through the cracks. Marissa shook her head slowly. How many? It were? Trying to find out. Adrienne woke screaming the next night. Marissa jolted upright as the monitors beeped. Adrienne's voice was hoarse, clawing through the dark. No. No, please. I'll study hard, I promise. Don't put me in the dark. Don't take Buddy again, please. Please, Marissa grabbed her. Cradled her, whispered her name over and over until Adrienne finally clung to her and sobbed. A nurse came in, but didn't speak. She simply adjusted the lights and left them in silence. 3 days later, Adrienne was discharged from the hospital, but only under the condition that she would continue daily therapy with Dr. Morrison. Marissa brought her home to their quiet, 2-story house on West Fairview. Adrienne stepped inside slowly, as if expecting everything to be different. But a WASN single quotes, her room was the same. Purple comforter. Desk with books. Photos on the wall. She stood in the doorway, staring at the stuffed fox on her pillow. I thought you'd packed everything away, she whispered. I couldn't, Marissa said. Adrienne stepped inside, ran a finger across her dresser. I missed this room so much I started drawing it from memory. I got pretty close. Marissa blinked back tears. Do you want me to stay with you? Adrienne hesitated, then nodded. Marissa climbed into bed beside her, just like when she was. Little. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Eventually, Adrienne murmured. He said, if I ever escaped, the world wouldn't want me anymore. He was wrong, Marissa said fiercely. So wrong. Meanwhile, detectives uncovered more journals in Chandler's garage, some of them, dating back 15 years. 5 names were connected to high school girls who had suddenly withdrawn from Lakemont. 2 of them had never been seen again. Another, Maya Dawson, had reportedly relocated to Michigan, but no public records could verify it. Holbrook had a sinking feeling that Adrienne was just the first one they'd managed to save. The rest, buried in stories, and maybe in dirt. One morning, Marissa entered Adrienne's room and found her sitting, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by textbooks. What are you doing, sweetheart? Adrienne didn't look up. Studying for what? Adrienne paused, then said, He used to say, if I stopped learning, my brain would decay. Marissa sat beside her. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not to him. Not to me. Adrienne's voice was barely above a whisper. But what if I want to? Marissa looked at her daughter's fragile form, at the bruises still fading along her arms. Her eyes were haunted. But underneath something remained, the drive. To survive, Marissa reached out and took her hand. Then we'll do it your way, at your pace. Adrienne nodded. For the first time since coming home, she smiled just a little. But that same night, while Marissa slept, Adrienne stood in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. She ran, a finger across her cheek, then across her collarbone. Then she whispered, Do you think I'm special now? She said it to no one, to a ghost. The town of Lakemont had always existed in a fragile kind of peace, small enough to feel familiar, quiet enough to avoid the headlines. But when Adrienne Ewing came home, the illusion shattered. By the end of the first week of August, the story had spread from regional news to national networks. Words like grooming, abduction, basement classroom, psychological captivity were splashed across scrolling banners, and with every broadcast, with every whispered conversation at grocery store checkouts and parent meetings, Marissa felt her daughter being examined like a spectacle. By week 2, she stopped answering the door. Adrienne began sleeping with the light on. She didn't ask. She simply did it. Buddy now refused to leave her side. He slept at the foot of her bed, head resting across her ankles, eyes twitching even in sleep. The vet said it wasn't uncommon. Dogs often bonded more deeply after trauma. He's guarding her. He knows what happened matters. Marissa believed it. Buddy growled the first time, saw a news van parked across the street. Detective Holbrook had been working 14-hour days. Since the investigation widened, they now had confirmed it. least 3 girls spanning from 2010 to 2016, Hood had questionable relationships with Tobias Chandler. None of them had pressed charges. 2 had left town abruptly. 1 had disappeared entirely. Her name was Emily Sayers, age 16. Last seen on June 2, 2014. Holbrook found her mother living in a mobile home outside Coeur d'Alene. "No, I don't want to reopen this," she said flatly when he knocked on her door. "Ma'am, we're trying to understand." She left. The woman said, "Ran off with some boy she met online." "That's what the sheriff told me. I don't want to dig that back up." "Did she ever mention a teacher named Tobias Chandler?" The woman's face changed. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lit a cigarette. "She used to talk about biology a lot. Stayed after school for extra credit. Never brought home a report card. I didn't ask questions. It was working, too. Jobs back then? I didn't know what was going on. Do you ever find anything?" Holbrook asked. The woman looked away. In her backpack, a bracelet, pink, like a kid's thing, said it was from her teacher. She threw it away after.
I said,
"I wouldn't understand." Marissa tried to set rules gently, but she could feel Adrienne shrinking from them. "No TV after 10. I'd like you to eat 3 meals a day. No locking your door." Each one was met with polite silence and then quiet avoidance. 1 morning, she found all the curtains in Adrienne's room taped shut with black construction paper. When asked, Adrienne shrugged. "I like the dark." Buddy barked and clawed at the window until Marissa pulled the tape down. Adrienne didn't protest. She just turned and sat quietly at her desk later that day. Marissa found her attempting to recreate one of Chandler's old lesson plans from memory, complete with a seating chart. Despite being the only student, Adrienne's therapy sessions with Dr. Helena Morrison moved from daily to every other day. In their 5th meeting, Adrienne asked a single question: "How long until I'm fixed?" Dr. Morrison leaned forward. "You're not broken. This isn't about fixing. It's about healing. Understanding what happened to you." Adrienne stared at her hands. "But what if I wanted it? You were a child. He was an adult in power. That makes it abuse." Adrienne didn't reply, but a small tear rolled down her cheek. The forensic team returned to 4,847 Rimrock after. The soil analysis revealed additional anomalous soft spots, ground inconsistencies, traces of calcium phosphate. They uncovered a second hidden room beneath the detached garage. Inside, old lab tables, stacked notebooks, more student files, and a corkboard covered in photos. Girls smiling, laughing, all high. School-aged, most had been students in Chandler's biology classes between 2008 and 2021, but some were younger. One photo was labeled simply, Phase 1 Emily, another advanced track Adrienne. Holbrook stared at the board in silence for nearly a full minute before ordering every photo to be scanned, logged, and matched to school yearbooks. "This wasn't just obsession," he said. "This was curriculum." Adrienne's first trip outside the house was supposed to be simple: a drive to the bookstore. She asked for it herself, tentatively, to see the shelves again. "I won't talk to anyone," Marissa agreed, cautiously hopeful. But when they arrived and stepped through the door, Adrienne froze. It was the science aisle. A tall man stood at the end of it, dark-haired, slender, stranger. But the resemblance was too close. Adrienne let out a strangled sound and dropped the book in her hands. She bolted out the door. Marissa found her in the parking lot, rocking, whispering, "I'm not late. I'm not late. I'm not late." She drove her home in silence. Back at the house, Adrienne sat on the kitchen floor and whispered, "I wanted to go to the University of Washington. I wanted to study neuroscience." "Still can," Marissa said gently. Adrienne shook her head. "Not like this. Not with this. Noise in my head." "Then we take small steps," Marissa said. "One at a time." Adrienne's voice dropped. "He said if I ever tried to leave, the outside world would forget me." "They didn't," Marissa said. "I didn't," Adrienne whispered. Meanwhile, back at the sheriff's office, Holbrook stared at a new case file. A girl from Oregon. Missing since 2022, she'd spent a summer at a youth science camp in Idaho. Camp records listed Tobias Chandler as a guest speaker that year, The girl's name was Wafi Lin. She was 15. The file had gone cold after 2 months until now. Reopen. This, Holbrook said, and alert Oregon State Police. That night, Marissa found Adrienne sitting on the porch, swing-wrapped in a blanket, Buddy curled at her feet. Couldn't sleep? Marissa asked. Adrienne shrugged. It's too quiet in my head. It used to be full all the time. Noise, instructions, assignments. Silence feels weird now. You'll get used to it. Adrienne looked out into the dark. Do you think people can be reprogrammed? Marissa sat beside her. I think they can be hurt, and I think they can heal. But you're not a computer, sweetheart. You're a person. Adrienne's eyes shimmered, like I don't feel real, like I was just built by him. To be what he wanted, you're real, Marissa said, voice thick. You're you. You were always you. Adrienne turned toward her, lip trembling. I'm scared I don't know how to be anything else. Marissa wrapped her arms around her. That's why we take it slow. We learn together. No grades, no assignments, just one breath at a time. Adrienne nodded, her body finally relaxing against her mother's side, and for the first time since. She'd come home. She whispered the words that had stayed locked inside her chest for 12 long months. I missed you, Mom. Adrienne was beginning to speak in full paragraphs again. It had taken weeks of gentle routine therapy, short walks, sketching in the backyard with Buddy at her feet, but she was beginning to look people in the eye, beginning to speak without hesitation. She still whispered often and rarely raised her voice above a murmur. But when Dr. Morrison asked during one session what she wanted to do this fall, Adrienne didn't shrug like she had the first 10 times. I want to go back to school. Marissa had stopped breathing. Dr. Morrison paused too. Lakemont High. Adrienne nodded. Just to see. Maybe not full-time. Maybe part-time or just the library. The smell of books. I miss it. Maurice's voice cracked. We can make that happen. Whatever you need. Marissa met with the school board the next day, the principal guidance counselor, and head of trauma support services all assembled in a quiet, administrative wing with pastel posters still hanging from last semester. Everyone had seen the news. Everyone spoke carefully, but they were also surprised. You're saying she wants to return already? The principal, Ms. Browning, asked. She wants to walk the halls. Be in the library, Marissa said. She wants to start. Remembering who she was before. We'll support her, Browning said. But I'll be honest, this is unprecedented. I'm sure it is, Marissa said evenly. But my daughter's life has been nothing but unprecedented. Adrienne returned to Lakemont High on a Monday morning in mid-September. Marissa parked in the lot and offered to walk in with her, but Adrienne shook her head. I need to do it myself, just for a little bit. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a light hoodie down. Her hair had grown out awkwardly, but she didn't hide it. No makeup, no backpack, just her. Buddy waited in the car with Marissa, watching through the windshield with alert, golden eyes. Adrienne stepped inside the building and stopped. The hallway was quiet. A few teachers lingered by the office. A few students looked up. One girl whispered, "That's her," and then fell silent. Adrienne moved toward the library. No one stopped her. No one stared for long. The world did not tilt off its axis. She sat at the long table near the windows, where she'd spent so many afternoons before. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw. Meanwhile, Detective Holbrook had compiled a formal list of possible victims. 9 names, 5 officially missing. 4 runaways who had never resurfaced. Despite paper-thin stories of relatives and relocations, only Adrienne had returned. 2 of the families refused interviews. One mother had been institutionalized after her. Daughter vanished in 2012. Another father had died from an overdose a year after his. Child's disappearance, Chandler's crimes had left long shadows. They were still falling. Marissa met with a new therapist, one who specialized in recovery for parents of abducted children. You're entering the second trauma now, the therapist explained. The aftermath. Marissa frowned. But she's home. Isn't this the end? The therapist shook her head gently. It's the end of the captivity, but not of the damage. What happens now is just as critical. Marissa swallowed. I just want to fix her. You can't, the therapist said. But you can be the ground she grows from. Adrienne returned to the school 3 times that week. Each visit was a few minutes longer. She began greeting teachers she once knew. Mr. Rizzo, the art teacher. Mrs. Hartwell, who ran the theater department. They were warm, but cautious. No one asked questions. No one mentioned Mr. Chandler. But on Thursday, as she passed the science wing, something shifted. Room 214. His old room, door closed, empty. Adrienne stopped. The hall lights flickered slightly. She reached out, fingers brushing the door's handle. Adrienne, she turned. Mrs. Hartwell stood at the end of the hall. Do you need anything, sweetie? Adrienne's hand fell away. No, just remembering something. 8. That night, Adrienne sat at the kitchen table while Marissa made tea. I remembered the bracelet today, Adrienne said softly. The pink one he gave me. Marissa set down the mug slowly. I used to wear it even while I slept. I thought it meant I was his favorite student. Like I'd earned something no one else could. Marissa walked over, sat across from her. He had a whole box of them, Adrienne continued. Each one labeled. Each one for someone. Marissa couldn't speak. I think I wasn't the first, Adrienne said. I think I was just the last. The one who stayed long enough to be found. You were the one who survived, Marissa whispered. Adrienne looked up. What if that's not enough? Holbrook paid a visit to Chandler in county lockup that same evening. He wasn't asking permission, just showing the photos. Girls, names, files, yearbook pages. Which ones were yours? Holbrook asked. Chandler smiled. All of them. And what happened to them? Chandler shrugged. Some graduated early. Some couldn't handle the pressure. I had to let go. Define let go, Holbrook said. They weren't ready. They lost focus. I removed them from the curriculum. Where are they now? You've got your shovels, Chandler said, leaning back. Dig. A week later, Adrienne requested to go back to the library, but this time with her planner. The one she'd found again, the one she used to write in every day before everything changed. Marissa hesitated. What for? Adrienne smiled faintly. To make a new plan. That same afternoon, Adrienne stood in front of a guidance counselor and said she wanted to take the SATs. I know I missed a year, she said, but I never stopped learning. I just learned differently. The counselor looked stunned. You sure? Adrienne's voice didn't waver. I'm sure. Back at the house, Marissa found her daughter sitting cross-legged on the floor, flashcards spread across her rug. Buddy lay nearby, snoring. Adrienne looked up as her mother stepped in. Can you quiz me on cell respiration? Marissa blinked. You're serious? Adrienne nodded. They sat together for an hour, quizzing, correcting, laughing when they got things wrong. Marissa saw the spark, again the one Adrienne used to have when she got lost in science. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The next morning, Adrienne woke early, showered. Dressed, she stood at the top of the stairs in a clean hoodie, jeans, sneakers, and her University of Washington ball cap. Marissa met her at the bottom with toast and coffee. Big day? She asked. Adrienne nodded. Library? Then sat prep. Then, I want to write something. What kind of something? Adrienne paused. My story. Marissa's heart tightened. You're ready? No, Adrienne said, but I want to try. That evening, while Marissa made dinner, Adrienne sat at her desk and began to write. The first sentence came slowly but clearly. My name is Adrienne Ewing. And for 365 days, I wasn't where I was supposed to be. She stared at it for a while, then kept going. For the first time in a year, Adrienne Ewing had a routine of her own choosing, not one imposed by her captor, not one dictated by fear. She woke at 7 a.m., she walked with Buddy around the block. She made her own oatmeal. Then she studied science, math, English, and personal essays, her choice, her pace. By early October, she had re-enrolled in 2 virtual classes at Lakemont High. The school board waived the tuition. The town had quietly rallied around her, though no one said much directly. The community wasn't sure what to say. Adrienne didn't want pity. She wanted progress. The story she was writing, her own account, grew with every passing day. A memoir, exactly. More like a forensic diary, she wrote in the second person. You wake in the dark. You wait for the light to switch on. You don't speak first. You know better. Marissa read the first 20 pages one night while Adrienne was asleep. Her hands trembled with every paragraph. The clinical precision, the methodical trauma, the erasure of time. It was all there, unfiltered, unforgiving, and deeply, deeply articulate. Adrienne hadn't lost her intelligence. She'd refined it into something razor-sharp. Back at the sheriff's office, Holbrook was piecing together what felt like the outline of a cult. Not one with candles and rituals, something more insidious, educational grooming. That's what the psychologist on staff had called it. Chandler had developed a long-term, multi-year strategy to identify, isolate, and intellectually indoctrinate his victims. He used academic success as bait, praise as fuel, isolation as punishment. It was so subtle most parents never noticed, until their daughters disappeared. Forensic teams had uncovered for confirmed burial sites on the Chandler property and adjacent lots. 2 were animal remains. 2 were not. The coroner confirmed the identity of one body. Emily Sayers, age 16, missing since 2014. Cause of death, undetermined. The second body was too decomposed for immediate identification. But based on the timeline, it likely belonged to Kayla Pendry. Last seen in 2012, both girls had attended Lakemont High. Both had taken biology with Mr. Chandler. Neither had been properly investigated. Until Adrienne. Adrienne had begun seeing a second therapist, now one trained in exposure, recovery, and trauma unbinding. Her name was Dr. Valerie Kinsey. She didn't ask Adrienne to talk. She asked her to reclaim. They started with drawing. Then visualization. Then memory testing, not for facts, but for control. What memory scares you most? Dr. Kinsey asked one morning. Adrienne thought for a long time. Then she said, the first time I heard him lock the door from the outside. Why that one? Because I realized I was no longer in a classroom. I was in a system. One I didn't choose. In late October, Adrienne stood before a camera crew in the school auditorium, empty. Except for her and Principal Browning, the segment was for a national program. It's on survivor resilience. She agreed to it on her terms. No photos from the abduction. No mention of the phrase girl in the basement. She wore a Lakemont High hoodie, no makeup, hair tucked behind her ears. She looked straight into the camera and said, "My name is Adrienne Ewing. I was taken. But I wasn't erased. I'm still here. I still matter. And I'm not the only one." She paused and added, "There are girls who didn't make it back. I want to speak for them too." That night, the piece aired on national TV. Emails poured into Marissa's inbox. Letters, calls, comments. Some from other survivors. Some from families of the missing. Some from girls who hadn't disappeared but had come close. Adrienne read each one. Every single word, and then she said, "I want to create something." Halloween. Adrienne had launched a small online project called Silent Steps, a private submission archive for teenage survivors of grooming and coercion in educational settings. Within 5 days, she had 60 entries. By the second week, there were over 200. Each entry anonymous. Each one following a pattern she recognized. He said I was smarter than the others. He kept me after class. He said no one would understand what we had. He called it a mentorship. Adrienne sorted them all into folders by manipulation pattern. She was building a psychological map. It was horrifyingly familiar. Detective Holbrook, now working closely with the FBI's behavioral unit, requested to meet with Adrienne again, not as an interrogation. As a consultant, she agreed. They met at the sheriff's office, where Adrienne sat across from a corkboard filled with timelines, photos, aliases, and names. She pointed to one. "This girl said she wasn't taken, but he tried. How do you know?" Adrienne tapped a pattern of comments in the margins of a scanned assignment. "See these words? These are the same ones he gave me during phase 1. He was testing her loyalty. Holbrook looked at her for a long time. You know his process better than we ever could. Adrienne didn't flinch. I lived in it. In mid-November, Chandler's trial was officially set to begin in early spring. Multiple charges. Unsealed. Indictments. Potential federal charges pending if trafficking was confirmed. The press was brutal. The headlines relentless. Marissa tried to keep Adrienne away from it. But Adrienne was already reading every article, circling inaccuracies, annotating gaps, correcting quotes. This isn't just about me, she told her mother one night. It's about systems. It's about how no one stopped him. Marissa touched her daughter's hand. You don't have to carry it all. Adrienne said, I'm not carrying it. I'm mapping it. That Thanksgiving, Adrienne made pumpkin bread from scratch. Came out lopsided and dense. She laughed for 5 full seconds when it collapsed on the plate. Marissa joined her. Buddy. Barked once and wagged his tail. Adrienne grinned. That's terrible. It's perfect, Marissa said. And for the first time, Adrienne didn't correct her. The first snowfall came early that December. Flurries drifted down on Lakemont's pine-lined streets, frosting rooftops and quieting the world with that heavy hush that only winter could bring. Marissa stood in the front window watching the sky. Inside, the house was warm. Adrienne sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, earbuds in, transcribing survivor entries from her Silent Steps project into categories: emotional, grooming, academic isolation, conditional praise, sleep deprivation, dependency structuring. Each had its own folder, subfolders, color codes. Dr. Morrison said the work was part of Adrienne's healing process. Dr. Kinsey wasn't so sure. She's building a map of trauma. But she's still inside it, Kinsey warned. Watch her. Not for relapse, but for entrapment. She could get lost in her own architecture. Marissa watched too, carefully, quietly. But Adrienne kept showing up for meals, for therapy, for herself. She wasn't vanishing into the project. She was charting her way through it. 2 weeks before Christmas, Adrienne asked to visit the Chandler property. Marissa froze. Sweetheart. Why? I need to see the outside of it, she said. I keep dreaming about the inside. I want to overwrite that? You think that's safe? I don't know, Adrienne said softly, but I think it's necessary. Sheriff's deputies accompanied them to 4847 Rimrock. The house sat empty, sealed under court order. A for sale sign had been posted, but was marked pending litigation. Adrienne stepped out of the car, wrapped in her navy peacoat, scarfed around her neck, gloves tucked in one hand. Buddy came too. He growled low when they pulled up the driveway. His hackles raised. Adrienne knelt beside him. It's okay, she whispered. You found your way home. So did I. Marissa stood silently behind her, heart thudding with every step her daughter took. Adrienne didn't try to go in. She just walked around the perimeter. Slowly, once. When she reached the back side where the basement windows had been bricked and glass blocked, she paused. This is where he taught me to fear silence, she said aloud. Where I learned to earn approval before oxygen. Reese's breath caught. Adrienne touched the foundation with her gloved fingers. But now, it's just concrete and rot. He doesn't live here anymore. Then she turned and walked away. Later that night, she had another dream. In it, she was back in the classroom. Same desk, same walls. But there was no door, just a window. Outside the window, Buddy barked and barked until the walls cracked. And sunlight poured in. Adrienne woke up sweating but smiling. The next morning, she handed Marissa an envelope. Inside, college application draft, University of Washington. Pre-med.essay title. My life was structured like a lab report. Hypothesis. Procedure, result, escape. Marissa read it through once. Then again, cried into her coffee for a solid 5 minutes. Adrienne didn't flinch, just waited for feedback. Back at the sheriff's office, Detective Holbrook was coordinating with the federal task force. FBI had traced Chandler's IP address across multiple forums for alternative education. High achievement, mentorship, and private youth advancement. He'd posted anonymously offering elite, individualized instruction for gifted girls. In vague but insidious language, 3 more families had come forward with suspicions. 1 from Montana, 1 from Utah, 1 from Oregon. No formal complaints. No arrests. But all 3 had disturbing similarities. Young daughters enrolled in summer enrichment programs suddenly withdrew from school afterward, became secretive, anxious, obsessed with grades. All had mentioned a teacher named Mr. C. No one knew his full name. Now they did. Adrienne and Marissa spent Christmas Eve just the 2 of them. No visitors, no press, no pity, just flannel pajamas. A sad fake tree from the basement. And Buddy wrapped in a string of battery lights. Adrienne unwrapped a gift from her mama leather journal. Deep green with a brass clasp. Inside the front cover, for whatever you want to write next. Adrienne smiled. I already have a title. Marissa raised an eyebrow. Yeah? Adrienne nodded. Reconstruction. January brought new hearings. Chandler's attorney attempted to argue diminished responsibility due to emotional trauma suffered during childhood. The courtroom remained silent while Adrienne sat in the second row. Her arms crossed, notebook in her lap. The prosecution rebutted with 327 pages of planned grooming behavior. Evidence of premeditation, digital logs, supply receipts for the basement remodel, and forensic documents. Adrienne didn't blink. When Chandler turned around once, trying to find her face in the crowd, Adrienne calmly stood, walked out, and didn't look back. He doesn't get my attention anymore, she told Marissa afterward. I'm done being his student. Later that month, she received an email. Subject, application decision, University of Washington. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. She got in. She'd been accepted. Full scholarship, Marissa screamed. Adrienne just laughed, and really laughed this time. Not the careful kind, but a full-bodied, head-thrown-back sound. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough. In her final therapy session before graduation, Dr. Kinsey asked, "What does recovery mean to you now?" Adrienne thought for a long time. "It's not a return," she said. "It's not going back. It's building forward with the parts I didn't lose." Kinsey smiled. "And what parts are those?" Adrienne smiled back. "My mind, my will, my words." That week, Adrienne posted the final entry in her Silent Steps project. It was hers, so the girls who never came back. I saw the maps you left behind. I followed your coordinates. I'm here not just for me, but for you. I will keep telling the truth until silence isn't necessary, until no one has to earn love through excellence, till no one is ever taught that captivity is education. We will make noise. Together. Lakemont High's graduation ceremony was held in early June, under a cloudless sky. Folding chairs lined the football field in perfectly spaced rows. Parents fanned themselves. Cameras flashed. Adrienne sat in the second row with the other seniors. Her name freshly restored to the official list only 3 weeks earlier. No one had questioned it. No one dared. She wore her cap and gown with quiet dignity, no medals. No cords, no outward signs of the war she'd fought just to sit among them. But when she walked across the stage to accept her diploma, the entire stadium stood. No one cheered louder than Marissa. Later, as they returned home, Adrienne placed the diploma in her backpack, zipped it shut, and smiled. I'm more proud of this than anything I ever earned in that basement. Marissa swallowed the lump in her throat. That's because you earned it. No one else owns it. Adrienne looked toward the sun. It feels different out here now, like I can finally breathe full air again. Back at the sheriff's office, Holbrook prepared for the final phase of the Chandler investigation. A grand jury had approved 23 charges ranging from kidnapping and false imprisonment to sexual misconduct and psychological coercion. The trial date was set for mid-August. Adrienne would be asked to testify. She didn't hesitate. I want to. Not for me. For them. By them, she meant the other girls, the ones whose families never received a call. The ones whose names lived only in paper files and bricked-up rooms. In July, Adrienne was invited to a closed-door Survivor Summit in Seattle, hosted by a national nonprofit. Marissa went with her. Staying in the hotel while Adrienne met with girls from all over the country, some trafficked, some abused by coaches, counselors, family members. All had one thing in common: they'd survived systems meant to protect them. At the summit's conclusion, Adrienne stood in front of a packed room and read a short passage from her memoir in progress. We don't heal by forgetting. We heal by remembering correctly, by naming the wrong thing, by restoring the thing inside us that was labeled property. The room was silent. Then came the applause. Marissa watched from the back. She wept again, but this time quietly and with awe. August 15th, day 1 of the trial. Adrienne took the stand in a cream blouse, black slacks, and her hair pulled back. She looked older than 17. She answered every question without shaking. She described the abduction, the grooming, the classroom. She spoke clearly, carefully, and with devastating precision. When asked how she'd survived, she answered, "I kept my mind. That's what he couldn't take." The courtroom didn't make a sound, not even Chandler. He sat silently, face pale, eyes sunken. He never looked directly at her. Good. After the trial adjourned that day, Marissa and Adrienne sat outside on a bench in the courthouse gardens. "Was that the hardest part?" Marissa asked. Adrienne shook her head. "No, the hardest part was waking up every day thinking he was right, that I was nothing without his approval. And now," Adrienne looked at the flowers, at the bees, at the open sky. "Now I know he was just a man, a broken one, and I was never his to begin with." The trial lasted 14 days. Chandler was convicted on all counts. He received 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. His attorney declined to appeal. When the verdict was read, Adrienne didn't flinch. She simply said, "That's enough." After the trial, Marissa and Adrienne returned to their quiet life. Only now, the house no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a beginning. Adrienne published the first chapter of her memoir on the Silent Steps blog. It went viral within a week. Agents began reaching out. Interview requests poured in, but she ignored most of them, except one. From a small nonprofit press founded by survivors, she said yes to that one. In early September, she moved into her dorm at the University of Washington. Buddy stayed with Marissa, but Adrienne promised weekly visits. They hugged tightly at the curb. "You sure you're ready?" Marissa asked, brushing hair from Adrienne's eyes. Adrienne smiled. "I'm not sure, but I'm going anyway." Marissa nodded. "That's what brave looks like." Adrienne laughed. "No, brave was you. You never stopped looking for me. I never will." They held each other a moment longer, then Adrienne turned and walked toward the entrance. Step by step. Back, heart forward. Her dorm room was simple. Twin bed, desk, shelves. She set down her things, pinned her acceptance letter to the corkboard, and opened her laptop. Her book file was waiting. She typed the next line: "Healing isn't linear. Sometimes you'll want to walk back into the dark just to prove you can leave again. That's okay. Just don't stay there." She hit save, and for the first time since her abduction, Adrienne lay down in a room with a locked door that locked from the inside, and she slept without dreaming. Fall quarter brought everything at once: a lobby, textbooks, late-night study sessions, and the sharp realization that freedom meant responsibility. 2. Adrienne embraced it all. She sat near the front of her intro to psych lecture. She tutored a struggling biology student in the evenings. She volunteered twice a week with a peer support group called Reclaim Space, helping other survivors transition into college life. Some mornings, she still woke from dreams that felt like trapped sunlit. Rooms, tests with no right answers, chairs with no legs. But when she did, she breathed. She grounded herself, and then she got up anyway. Her roommate, TC, was a theater major from Sacramento. With a quick laugh and no concept of personal space, she'd read Adrienne's viral essay without knowing who she was. "You wrote that." She gasped one night after putting two and two together. Adrienne smiled gently. Yeah, I did. Cece stared at her for a long moment. Then you want the bigger closet side? I'm taking the crappy one. That's final. Adrienne laughed harder than she had in weeks. Back in Lakemont, Marissa kept the house just the way it had always been, except for one new addition, a framed photo of Adrienne, holding her diploma on the mantel. Buddy still slept in Adrienne's room most nights. Occasionally he'd wander downstairs, whimper once, stare at the door. Marissa would pat his head. She's coming back. Don't worry. In November, Adrienne received an invitation to speak at a conference on trauma and narrative at Stanford. The keynote panel was titled, Who Owns the Story? Her talk focused not on Chandler but on language. How do we tell what happened to us without using the words given to us by the ones who hurt us? She asked the crowd. Silence, then applause. She finished with, When I started to rewrite my story, I didn't edit out the pain. I wrote past it. She spent Thanksgiving in L.A. Came, the house smelled the same. The walls seemed smaller. Maybe she had simply grown. Buddy practically leapt onto her the moment she walked through the door. Marissa made sweet potato casserole. Adrienne set the table. They didn't talk about the trial or the basement or the missing girls. They talked about books. Dorm life. An anthropology class Adrienne was taking that she hated but was learning to respect. Normal things, real things. Later that night, Marissa asked if she wanted to visit the cemetery. They'd finally buried the two identified victims. Emily Sayers and Kayla Pendrian side-by-side graves with granite markers paid for by a community. Fundraiser Adrienne had organized. Adrienne nodded. I'd like that. They brought white lilies and handwritten letters. Adrienne knelt at each grave, pressing her palm to the cool stone. I'm sorry it was me and not you, she whispered. But I won't waste it. I promise. Back at the university, Adrienne kept writing. The memoir was nearing completion. Her publisher, quiet, survivor-led, and deeply respectful, was planning a spring release. Title, The Light Under the Door. Subtitle, One Girl's Escape from the Classroom of Control. Adrienne hated the subtitle. But marketing insisted. She shrugged. As long as the inside's mine. In January, she was asked to consult on a state bill that aimed to mandate stricter background checks for educators. Working one-on-one with students in enrichment or mentorship roles, Adrienne read the draft, edited 3 sections, rewrote a clause. Then, she spoke at the State House in Olympia. It's not about assuming guilt, she told the committee. It's about assuming care. It's about knowing that trust is a currency too often spent without thought. The bill passed committee review unanimously. On the 1-year anniversary of her escape, Adrienne returned home for a candlelight vigil held in Lakemont Park. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Over 200 people showed up. Some brought letters. Some just stood in silence. Someone strung up a banner that read, You brought light back with you. Adrienne stood beside Marissa, holding her hand, Buddy at their feet. And for the first time, she allowed herself to cry, not from fear or grief, but from relief, from knowing that she had come through, and that she was still coming through. Every day later that night, she and Marissa sat by the fire pit in their backyard. You know, Marissa said softly, there were days I thought you'd never come home. Not alive, not as you, Adrienne looked into the flames. There were days I thought that too, but you did. Adrienne nodded. Because you never stopped looking. Because Buddy never stopped barking. Marissa smiled. That dog, Adrienne laughed. It was the first crack in the wall. They sat in silence after that, watching the stars blink into being. When Adrienne returned to school in the spring, the memoir was released. It didn't hit bestseller lists, but it hit something deeper. Readers dash, especially young women, flooded her inbox. Survivors, siblings, teachers, strangers. Some wrote, You said what I couldn't. Others, This made me feel less invisible. Adrienne responded to as many as she could. Then she created a second online space, Reconstruction Archive, a collection of first-person, survivor stories focused not on the trauma, but on the after. Healing, movement, joy. One night in April, she sat under a cherry blossom tree on campus and read aloud from her book to a small crowd of students. The final lines. Freedom isn't loud at first. It's a whisper. Cracked window, a dog's bark, a mother's voice on the other side of the door, and then one, date's yours. Gee. Closed the book. The crowd stood. Summer came in soft this time. The heat rolled in gently, without the sharp sting of last year's trauma clinging to every sound, every smell. For the first time since her return, Adrienne didn't wake in June with dread. She woke with purpose, with plans, with peace. She was home in Lakemont for the summer. Having completed her first year at the University of Washington with straight A's, she wasn't running from something anymore. She was building towards something. The town felt smaller now, but not in a bad way. The streets she once walked fearfully now held memories of her, its own resilience, and she could pass the trail where she and Buddy had walked the morning she vanished without. Flinching, sometimes she even walked it again. Buddy always came along. She'd turned 18 in May. Marissa had organized a quiet backyard celebration, just a few neighbors. A cake from the local bakery and a banner that read, "To Adrienne, may your story always be yours." Adrienne cried. But this time the tears weren't heavy, they were light. Like the release of something long held. In July, she gave a keynote at a National Youth Safety Summit in Denver. Her speech wasn't about trauma. It was about power, the real kind. The kind that grows back when no one thinks it can. She opened with, "I wasn't saved by the police, or the legal system, or even luck. I was saved by a dog who wouldn't stop barking and a mother who refused to accept that silence meant surrender." She ended with, "You don't have to be okay to begin. You just have to begin." Back in Lakemont, Adrienne started volunteering at the local library, helping kids with summer reading. The same library she'd retreated to in her first Fragile. Weeks of re-entry now became a place she filled with laughter. One of the kids, bright 11-year-old girl named Sadie, asked her one afternoon, "Are you the girl from the book?" Adrienne smiled. "Which part?" Sadie grinned. "The one who made it." Adrienne knelt beside her. "Then yeah, that's me." Marissa kept a copy of Adrienne's memoir on the bookshelf, spine turned outward. She didn't need to open it anymore. She'd lived it. But sometimes, when Adrienne was out with friends or volunteering, Marissa would walk past it and place her hand on the cover, not for the pain, for the pride. By late August, Adrienne was preparing to return to campus for her sophomore year. She packed, slowly folding each piece of clothing with deliberate care, marking each notebook, each pencil case. Everything she brought with her now, she brought by choice, not as survival, but as declaration. On the night before she left, she and Marissa sat on the back deck again, Buddy at their feet, the sky thick with stars. "You're sure about Seattle?" Marissa asked, her voice steady but tinged with the old ache. Adrienne smiled. "I am. It's loud and messy and full of people who don't know me, and I love it." Marissa nodded. "Just promise me one thing, anything. If you ever feel lost again, even a little, you come home, okay?" Adrienne reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. "I will. But I'm not lost anymore." Before she left, Adrienne visited the cemetery one more time. 2 stones. 2 names. Too few words. She knelt, left a new letter. This time she didn't say sorry this time. She said thank you and goodbye. Her second year at university started like the first, with butterflies and books. But now she had friends. A platform she joined, a research lab. Studying trauma's impact on cognitive development, she started writing a second book, fiction this time, about a girl who doesn't disappear, about a system that listens in time, about a world that bends before it breaks. On a Tuesday in mid-September, she walked past the biology building where she was scheduled to meet her academic advisor. She paused. A girl stood outside, nervous. Flipping through her planner, Adrienne smiled. "First year," the girl nodded. "Yeah, you." Adrienne held the door open for her. "Second year, don't worry, it gets better," and she meant it. That night, she called Marissa. They talked for an hour about classes, her new lab partner, how Buddy still hogged the bed back home, I miss you, Marissa said. I miss you too. But I'm proud of you, Marissa added. Not for surviving, for thriving. Adrienne stared at the ceiling of her dorm, moonlight cutting across the wall. Me too, she whispered. Finally. In her notebook, she wrote a final line. Not for anyone else, just for her. I walked into the woods. I walked through the dark. I came back carrying fire.